Bismillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Welcome you here, brothers and sisters, in this event, the best event for the Dawah Committee and Muslim associations of prison. MashaAllah, these are beautiful places playing this beautiful night. I make a say about attending tonight. It's a pleasure for us to play. First and foremost, we start with reciting Quran, inshallah, tonight with one of the youth brothers, Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون أياما معدودات فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر وعلى الذين يطيقونه فدية طعام مسكين فمن تطوع خيرا فهو خير له وأن تصوموا خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصم ومن كان مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر ولتكملوا العدة ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون. وإذا سألك عبادي عني فإني قريب أجيب دعوة الداعي إذا دعان فليستجيبوا لي وليؤمنوا بي لعلهم يرشدون. أحل لكم ليلة الصيام الرفث إلى نسائكم هن لباس لكم وأنتم لباس لهن علم الله أنكم كنتم تختانون أنفسكم فتاب عليكم وعفى عنكم فالآن باشروهن وابتغوا ما كتب الله لكم وكلوا واشربوا حتى يتبين لكم الخيط الأبيض من الخيط الأسود من الفجر ثم أتموا الصيام إلى الليل ولا تباشروهن وأنتم عاكفون في المساجد تلك حدود الله فلا تقربوها كذلك يبين الله آياته للناس لعلهم يتقون. ولا تأكلوا أموالكم بينكم بالباطل وتدلوا بها إلى الحكام لتأكلوا فريقا من أموال الناس بالإثم وأنتم تعلمون.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. My dear respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I thank the
the brothers and sisters who have organized this program. And indeed, it's very important for us to study these kind of topics, especially when we are serious about implementing the correct practice in our fasting, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us Islam, and with Islam comes the aspects of submission and the aspects of practice. And it's important for every Muslim to do that which is right. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam to demonstrate to us and to show us how to carry out the correct acts. Now, there are two aspects of fasting. One aspect, which if you like, is the law, the letter of Islam. What you can do, what you can't do. What will make your fast correct, what will break your fast. How to correct a fast that is broken and so on. This is called, like, if you like, the letter of the law. This is the rules, the regulations. The other aspect is related to the deeper and wider meanings related to fasting, because all the aspects of our deen are not just there as rules and regulations, not just there about, yes, do this, do this. There's a bigger purpose that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from every aspect of our deen, whether it's explicit aspects of ibadah, salah, siyam, hajj, zakah, or whether it's wider aspects of our ibadah relating to buying and selling, marriage, divorce, raising our children, looking after parents. All these aspects, they have a purpose. And that purpose is always linked to how we become better people, purified with tazkiyah, and so that we can reach the akhirah having attained the most reward. So that aspect of fasting, the inner dimensions of fasting, what fasting is about, how to get the most out of your fast, this is not something that we're going to be addressing today. I believe we're going to be addressing that next week. There is another program which is next week, same place here again, where it's part of a different schedule. That one we're going to be talking about the inner aspects of fasting, how to really understand different aspects of fast. So today we're going to be concerned with the fiqh of fasting. And fiqh linguistically means to understand. Linguistically means to understand. But more deeper, it's about how have the scholars and how is it for us to understand the different laws when we understand them from their detailed evidences. These detailed evidences are going to come in the Quran, they're going to come in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, his practice, and also is going to come through some of the teachings of the ulama that came later. So that's fiqh, understanding. And we're going to be talking about fasting, which is siyam, and try to understand the rules and regulations of fasting, because it is not acceptable for any Muslim who has reached the stage where fasting is obligatory on them, and we're going to be talking about that. It's not acceptable for them to not know the rules of fasting. When you reach the stage of where fasting is obligatory, you have to fast, you have to know the rules. You are not excused. You're not excused for saying, well, I didn't know this. You have a duty as a Muslim to go and learn. Every Muslim has a duty to know the ahkam and rulings of purification and salah. If you're amongst the people who have to fast, we need to know the rules of fasting. If you're somebody who has money and a certain amount of time has passed, we need to know the rules of zakah, and so on. If you are going to get married, you need to know the ahkam and rules of marriage, and how to have a sound marriage, and what breaks the marriage, and so on. So every time you reach a stage in your life, you have to know those rulings. So with fasting, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has obligated on us the fasting of specific days. And those specific days are the month of Ramadan. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clearly stipulated that the obligation in fasting is Ramadan. There was a time when it wasn't Ramadan. It was something else. Does anybody know what else it was prior to Ramadan being made obligatory? It was the day of Ashura. Ashura, which was the 10th day of Muharram, prior to Ramadan being obligatory, the Prophet ﷺ was fasting Ashura, and he commanded or he ordered people to fast Ashura. However, when Ramadan became obligatory, he said, whoever wants to fast Ashura, he can do it. If somebody doesn't want to fast Ashura, the 10th of Muharram, they don't have to do it. So Ramadan is the set time that we have to fast. So in our rulings, there are different types of obligations. And one thing that we have to understand is what's known as timed obligations. Timed obligations. Timed obligations are obligations which become must on you when a certain time hits. So for example, now we prayed Isha, or some of us have prayed Isha. We don't have to pray Fajr because it's not the time for Fajr. So there is no obligation to pray Fajr. In fact, to pray Fajr is not correct. Until when? Until the next day, the dawn rises, the Fajr rises. When the Fajr rises, now it is obligatory on you to pray Fajr if you fulfill the conditions. And you have a time limit. That time limit for Fajr is up to when? Up to sunrise. So the moment the sun rises, that's the end time that you have allocated to pray. Now if you don't pray, you missed the prayer, you were sleeping or whatever, you still have to make up the prayer, but this is a timed obligation. With Ramadan, with the fasting of Ramadan, it's a timed obligation. So when does the obligation start? It starts essentially by one of two things. Either because in the lunar calendar, the months are either 29 days or 30 days. Why is it 29 or 30? Because the time or the distance for the moon to orbit the earth is 29 and a half days, 29.5 days. So that's why we get some days are 29, some days are 30. So when we are in Sha'ban, which we have just started, Sha'ban can be either 29 days, or it's going to be 30 days. So on the day which is the 29th, we have to know, is the next day going to be the 30th, or is it going to be the first of Ramadan? Okay, so that's one thing. And that's going to basically determine for us when Ramadan starts. Either by us knowing that the next day is Ramadan, or the next day is going to be the 30th of Sha'ban. Now, in the past, and even today to a certain extent, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made Islam very easy. Easy for people who don't have access to technology, don't have access to telescopes, don't have access to calculation, don't know lots of maths. So it's very simple. The Muslim can just by looking at the sun, they can see what time is for Salah. You know, if you know when the sun is in the middle of the sky and it's about to come down, or it starts to come down from the middle of the sky, that's the time of Dhuhr. You know when Asr is, you know when Maghrib is, just by looking at the sun. By looking at the moon, you know what day of the month it is. Okay, you can just have access to, and you know that the month starts by just seeing the crescent. So you don't need to be a scientist. You don't need to have somebody who knows calculations or where is the moon in relation to the sun and the earth and astronomical calculations. So it was very simple to do that. They just had to look. They could see it. They could start. By looking at the sky, it can determine for us whether it is the next day is going to be the 30th of Sha'ban, which we're not going to fast, or it's going to be the 1st of Ramadan. So that's how we're going to know if Ramadan starts. Now in today's advancement, there's still, unfortunately, a debate amongst Muslims, which usually divides Muslims in this kind of time, which probably goes against the whole rationale and the whole essence of fasting, because it's to bring people together, which is, when does Ramadan start and who decides? And you have countries fighting, we're going to start on this day, and then no, we're going to start on the next day, and then some start the day after. And it's one of those things that is unfortunate, because in real terms, as astronomical calculation terms, scientists have already determined for the next 1,000 years exactly where the moon is. They know precisely where the moon is, where the sun is, where the earth. That's why if you search up, and they will tell you when a solar eclipse will happen, when a lunar eclipse will happen. This is very precise knowledge, but they know this. So we already know when it's going to be, but unfortunately there's a debate that happens, which I don't want to enter now because it's not part of what we're discussing. But essentially, what we're going back to the obligation, it's either going to be we complete Sha'ban 30 days, or if we see the sight, or we know that the moon has been born, the crescent is there, then it's going to be the beginning of Ramadan. Now, as soon as Ramadan enters, it becomes obligatory on us to fast. But who is it obligatory on? Well, it's obligatory essentially on 4 people who fulfill 4 conditions. It is wajib or fard. These terms can be used interchangeably. If you are fulfill one of 4 conditions. Firstly, it's obligatory on a Muslim. If you're not a Muslim, you're not obliged to fast. And even if you fasted, it's not going to be something that is going to be accepted from you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا مَنَعَهُمْ أَن تُقْبَلَ مِنْهُمْ نَفَقَاتُهُمْ إِلَّا أَنَّهُمْ كَفَرُوا بِاللَّهِ وَبِرَسُولِهِ. What prevented their charity from being accepted by Allah was that they disbelieved in Allah and His Messenger. If you don't believe in Allah, why would you expect Allah to reward you? Why would you expect Allah to accept from you? So, as a Muslim, that is a condition for obligation. But obviously, there's a bigger reality, which sometimes maybe in some Muslim countries, they miss the point. And that is, if you're not a Muslim, you don't have to fast. So you can't force everybody to fast. You know, sometimes certain countries are khalas, everybody has to fast. Even if they're not Muslim or they're not from the people of fasting. So force them to fast is against as well the ethics of Islam. And I know that those of you who have interacted with non-Muslims, maybe in school or in workplace or university, sometimes you find some of those non-Muslims, they sometimes feel embarrassed. Oh, is it okay if I eat in front of you? Is it okay if I have a drink? I know you're fasting. And they feel that maybe they're making you a little bit uncomfortable. But we know that, alhamdulillah, once you start fasting and get used to it, this kind of thing doesn't really affect you much. So number 1 is Islam. Number 2, you have to have a sound mind. You have to have aql. You have to be somebody who is mentally able. And what we mean by this is that, unfortunately, due to reality, there are people who have mental disabilities. They might have certain disabilities which prevent them from understanding, and they don't comprehend. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the rules and the obligations on people who can comprehend and understand the rulings. So if you don't understand, you're not obligated to fast. So again, sometimes you might see somebody who's not fasting, and you might be, oh, astaghfirullah, this guy's not. He might not even be mentally sane, and he could have a mental illness that you don't know about. So again, this is an important lesson for us. Don't judge people by looking at them and their condition. Thirdly, the person has to be past adolescence or past puberty. So the obligation starts when a person hits adolescence. The Prophet ﷺ said that the pen, meaning the pen of accountability, is lifted from 3 categories, and one of those categories, he said, is وَالصَّبِي حَتَّى يَبْلُغ, the young child until he reaches adolescence. So until a child reaches adolescence, they're not obliged to fast. They don't have to fast. However, like salah, siyam, the parents or those who are guardians should encourage children to fast. Even starting at the age of 7, encouraging them to fast, because it's about getting used to it. It's about that culture. Encourage a child to fast. And we have narrations even at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, some of the mothers, they would make like dolls. They would make like toys for their children who they wanted them to fast, and use these toys to distract them so that they wouldn't feel hungry, or sometimes they do some other distracting techniques just to encourage them to fast. So we encourage the child to fast at the age of 7 if they're able to do that. But in terms of obligation, in terms of rules, what do and do not, they have to be adolescent. So what did we say the first one was? Islam, sound mind, adolescence. Yeah? Those are the three things. What is the sign of adolescence? How do we know somebody has become an adolescent? Is it when they have their driving license? Yeah, you can answer here.
Adolescence. It's when they taking when they are very it's not
Sick? No. So what is adolescence? Adolescence is basically when a child becomes an adult. So when does a child become an adult? It's basically one of three things. Okay, one of three things. We have somebody? Yes.
when they
So yes, that's why. So one condition or one element is when they hit 15. If they hit 15, then that is a sign. But it could happen before 15. So it could happen if they are what they have a wet dream. So this is a wet dream is a sign usually for men that they have become adults, and for women if they have their monthly period. So these are usually three signs. There is another sign, but we won't go into detail with that. So essentially, one of those three signs, if a woman starts bleeding or has a wet dream or they hit the age of 15, that is the sign that they have become obliged to start fasting. And lastly, number 4, so we said Islam, sound mind, adolescence. Number 4, who is obliged to fast? They must have the ability to fast. Ability to fast. Ability means that they have the physical ability to not eat. And basically this excludes people who are what we say chronic, long-term illness or terminal illness that prevents them from fasting. Some people might have things like diabetes. In certain types of diabetes, type 1 diabetes, they do not rely on insulin, they have to eat. If they don't eat, their blood sugar drops down, etc. So these people have to always have something. It might be that they have lots of medicine. It might be that there are people who suffer from blood pressure issues. So these people, no matter how long, their illness is not going to get better soon. Okay, it's unanticipated. They might be very severe asthmatic. Things that are going to stay with them. This is different from someone who is temporarily ill. Somebody who has a flu. Somebody who is maybe just caught a cold or has gut problems. Any temporary issues that might resolve themselves, or maybe they had an operation and they need to eat. Anything which is temporary doesn't exclude them from the obligation. However, they have a certain kind of way to deal with that. All right, so these are the 4 categories that they must have to make the obligation on them fast. Now, fasting essentially is about 2 things. It's very simple. It's about 2 things that you have to have. Number 1, you have to have an intention. Okay? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are only according to their intentions. And because this is an act of ibadah, then you must have an intention. You must be doing it whilst... What does intention mean? It means that you are conscious and you know that you are fasting. This might be different to somebody, for example, who just doesn't eat, is not eating. They just happen to, maybe they woke up and they... Can I put it here? Yeah, is it here? I'm not sure. Yeah, how much sure. Yeah. They might be someone who is, today we have a new kind of fad in I think fad is an old word, you guys know that, but it's like a kind of a way that people follow in terms of dieting, which is the fasting. diets. You come across the 16 hours fasting. You have the 5-2 diet and the 16-8 and I don't know, there's different types. So where people are fasting, they're not fasting because of ibadah. They are fasting because they want to lose weight, or they're fasting to become healthy. Now their intention is not intention to do. So if that person, for example, is just in their mind, I'm just fasting tomorrow because it's part of my healthy fasting. I don't have the intention, and it happens to be Ramadan, but they are not aware. They haven't made the intention. They haven't made the conscious decision that I'm fasting Ramadan tomorrow. I'm just fasting for my health reasons. Then obviously that fast doesn't count because the intention has to be there. And the intention has to be there before the start of the fast. So that is before Fajr. The second element of fasting, to be correct, is to withhold, to stop. We're going to leave questions to the end because I think otherwise too many interjections. We're going to have we're going to split the session into two. So we'll leave questions. If you make a note of your question, then Siyam, linguistically, Siyam or Sawm is about holding, abstaining, stopping. That's linguistically. In this context, it's about stopping things which break your fast. So you have the intention, number one. Secondly, to withhold, to abstain from things that break your fast. Al-imsak anil mufattirat. That's all that fasting is about, really. Is if you do those two things, those are the pillars of your fast. Okay. Those are the pillars of the fast. So now then we need to know, if we go back to the intention is not about you have to say something with your tongue. It's not about that you have to say specific words. Intention is about conscious decision, a decision that I am going to fast. Ulama has differed about whether you have to have this intention. Is it enough just to have the intention at the beginning of Ramadan and that's it? I just at the beginning of Ramadan I say I'm going to intend to fast Ramadan and that's it? Or is it something that you intend every day? The opinion that I follow is that it should be every day. Why? Because every day is a ibadah on itself. Every day is a new ibadah. And so because it's a new ibadah, it needs a new intention. And that intention means that you have to have the intention before Fajr. Can you do the intention before you go to sleep? Yes. You can put your head on the bed, on the pillow and say, tomorrow I'm fasting. That's fine. Even if you don't get up for suhoor, even if you don't wake up before Fajr, that's fine. But your intention must be before Fajr, not after Fajr. Alright? Don't after you've woken up, you looked at the time and, I did make intention. So always have your intention before Fajr. This is for the obligatory fast. We're not talking about the recommended fast. That's a different ruling. Now, what are the things that break our fast? Because we have to, the second pillar, remember, is about abstaining from anything that breaks our fast. So, we know from the general ahadith and the Quran that really it's about abstaining and withholding from any substance which enters into the body cavity. Okay, the body cavity, basically inside us, we have a cavity, like a hole, if you like, which extends from here, goes all the way down the esophagus, it's a bit of biology for you, into the stomach, and then goes all the way through the intestines, and then comes on the other side, okay? The back passage. This is basically like a cavity, because in theory, in reality, it's a connected passage. So anything that enters the body cavity, any substance, and by substance we're talking about something that is liquid, something that is solid, entering the body cavity is gonna break the fast. But it has to enter from an open cavity. And the open cavities are essentially the nose, nasal cavity, the mouth, which we call the oral cavity, or from the other side, the front or the back passage. Okay, so anything that enters from any of those, that is gonna essentially break the fast. It doesn't matter how little it is. All right, even if it's a small amount, even if it's one drop, even if it's, you have to prevent yourself from making anything enter. Now, in this regards, it's important that a person guards themselves from entering and not doing anything that might compromise their entering. So, if you do things which are normal activities, that's fine. Like, for example, you're doing wuhu and you're rinsing your mouth, that's fine. However, the moment you start to do more than what is needed from you and you risk swallowing something, you will become blameworthy. You might be breaking your fast if you do that. That's why the Prophet ﷺ says, بالغ في الاستنشاق ما لم تكن صائما. You should be excessive or meticulous in nasal irrigation, washing your nose, as long as you're not fasting. This, as long as you're not fasting, tells us that when you are fasting, don't be excessive. Why? Because if you're excessive and water ends up going down your nose and in your throat, you have broken your fast. All right? Or you're making wudu, that's fine. But if you start, you start playing with water, you're fasting, you want to cool down, or and you're just cooling down, then you swallow something. Well, why are you playing with water? Why are you putting water and you have to cool down? That is negligent, and that will break your fast. So anything that is negligent is going to break your fast. And similarly, if you're going to take nasal drops or things like that, which enters the body by the cavity, that's going to break your fast. Does asthma inhaler, because the inhalers for asthma, the salbutamol, does that break your fast? This is one where the ulama have differed. Some say yes, it breaks your fast. Some say no, it doesn't break your fast. Why did they differ? Because they differed about the medicine in the asthma. Is it a substance or is it just like air? Because you smell, you are breathing air. Air doesn't break your fast. Or, aromas, if you like, gases don't break your fast unless you purposely inhale them. So this inhaler, is it a substance or not? Those who said it's a substance say it breaks your fast. And that's the opinion that I follow. Those who say it's not a substance, they say it will not break your fast, and so that's fine. Now, if anything enters the body not from the usual cavities, so if something enters by the skin, say you're applying oil to your skin or creams or whatever, then this is not a normal body cavity. It's not the body cavity, so it doesn't break your fast. Controversially, again, some people will say even if you had a drip, in your vein, and that drip is basically full of nutrients, so you could be putting all different types of nutrient caps and proteins and carbohydrates, everything's going into there. They said that doesn't break your fast. Why? Because it's not a normal cavity. Does it contradict the spirit of fasting? Yes. Because at the end of the day, when you have drips, which has glucose, essentially your body is going to have a message say, I don't need to eat. I've got enough glucose. I'm not going to eat. So you won't feel hungry. But it goes against the nature of fasting. Some will say it breaks your fast. But again, the opinion that I follow is that it doesn't break your fast. Similarly, if you have any other injections, you have vaccines, immunization, you have injections for your dental work, all these kind of things will not break your fast because it's not a substance entering your body cavity from an open source. The eyes are not an open cavity. The ears, although some of the fuqaha said ears are an open, but they're not really. The ears doesn't communicate with the mouth. There is a tube, but usually things that go inside your ear don't go inside your body unless there's damage. That's the difference. Now, if that is the case, you have to be careful of not swallowing anything that is inside your mouth, which shouldn't be inside your mouth. So if you have saliva, which is normal, that's fine, that's normal. However, and this is something that we have to pay attention to, if you are ill and you have a chest infection, And that chest infection means that you have phlegm. You all know what the phlegm is, yeah? Phlegm that comes out. If you happen to bring that phlegm out and it comes inside your mouth, and then you choose to swallow it, this is now a substance and it's going inside your body cavity. So that's going to break your fast. So be careful. And that's why it's very important that when you're fasting, make sure you're carrying a tissue with you all the time. Anytime you have a phlegm, you should just spit it out. Don't swallow it, because that's going to break your fast. Even in salah. In salah, you happen to cough and something comes out, khalas. Get your tissue out. Or use your clothes. I know it doesn't sound nice, but you can use your clothes and just... And this actually... there is a hadith, which is a strange hadith, but it is there, that Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, after the Prophet ﷺ, by many years, Abu Hurairah also had something like a phlegm or something, and he ended up having to spit it out into his cloak. His cloak was like made out of cotton. Cotton was like a valuable commodity. So he was saying, oh, look at Abu Hurairah now, he's able to spit into cotton. Before you would see me, I would lie on the ground because I didn't even have any food to eat. And I was so poor, I was literally on the floor, couldn't find it. Now I can spit into cotton, and now I have clothes and things. Like, see how he's not saying it to boast. He's saying it like, subhanAllah, how things have changed. Now I used to be so poor. Now I have some money, I had bought some myself. And in a way, he might be also saying that, things have changed for us in a negative way. Anyway, the point being is, anything that comes into your mouth, you shouldn't allow it to go back, because that is in danger of violating this aspect of the fast. However, one thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed us, and this is what the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned, whoever eats or drinks whilst fasting, but he has forgotten that he's fasting. So, من أكل أو شرب وهو صائم من نسي فأكل وشرب وهو صائم فليتم صومه فإنما أسقاه الله وأطعمه. That if somebody eats or drinks whilst fasting, but they forgot that they were fasting. It happens sometimes, especially in the early days of Ramadan. You're not used to the routine. You got up, you made yourself something to eat, and then you ate and you didn't realize. Now, if you didn't realize and you forgot, and then you realize, the Prophet ﷺ said, just carry on your fast. Because Allah says, رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَاخِذْنَا إِن نَسِينَا أَوْ أَخْطَأْنَا. Our Lord, don't take us to account, do not blame us if we forget or we make an error. So here, if forgetting is an exception to eating and drinking. However, if you've made yourself a bowl of cereal in the morning, and you're eating away at this cereal, and you've eaten most of it, and then at the last moment you said, I'm fasting. And you say, oh, actually, well, it's just one spoon. One spoon's not going to make much difference. I just had the whole bowl. And then you take that last one spoon, what's happened to your fast? It's broken. Why? Because the bowl that you ate was out of forgetfulness. Now that you are aware, you have to stop. And if you're aware with something in your mouth, you got to spit it out and rinse your mouth. So that is also important to understand. Okay, so these are important points in terms of entering and abstaining from anything entering the body in turn from an open cavity. The second thing that we have to abstain from when we are fasting, remember, fasting is our intention and about abstaining from that which breaks the fast. The second thing is from vomiting intentionally. Okay, vomiting intentionally will break your fast. The Prophet ﷺ said, من استقاء فلا قضاء عليه. من استقاء فعليه القضاء ومن غلبه القيء فلا قضاء عليه. Whoever has caused himself to vomit, put your finger inside your mouth, or you did something that has resulted in you vomiting, if you have done it on purpose, your fast has broken. However, if you haven't done it on purpose, meaning that, you're ill and you happen to vomit, you have something that didn't quite fit you, then here, there's nothing, you can just carry on your fast. You don't have to make up your fasts. However, if you do vomit, actually what happens sometimes, people overeat, don't they? They overeat in either in suhoor. You've overeaten, you've had so much suhoor, and then you pray your fajr, and then you went to lie down, and then the food is going to try and come out now. Your food is up to here. You haven't allowed it to go down. If that food comes out unintentionally, you haven't broken your fast, but you have to make sure you go and rinse your mouth. You gargle your mouth, because vomit is najis. It's not tahir, it's not clean. You have to go and gargle, and that gargling is accepted because it's for a reason. They're not playing about. It's not abath. You're gargling for a reason. So that is the second thing. And then the third thing, which you have to abstain from, is about having intimate relations with your husband or your wife. So having intimate relations, and by intimate, I have to use the word intercourse, which is important to us. I know there's children here, but this kind of is important for us to know. You have to abstain from this, and that's because, as the brother recited in the Surah Al-Baqarah, وَلَا تُبَاشِرُوهُنَّ. So you should not do not approach your wives during the daytime, and this obviously approaching the wives in having a relationship will result in the fast breaking, and there are things that build upon it as well. In the same manner, masturbation will also result in breaking the fast if it leads to ejaculation. Now, the next point is for a woman specifically. If a woman is going through her monthly cycle, or she is bleeding after giving birth, which we call postnatal bleeding, either hayd or nifas, then it is not allowed for her to fast. So it is haram for her to fast. The fast will not be accepted, and it's a concession. Allah has allowed her to break her fast. And more so because we know that this kind of time is difficult. It might be accompanied with a lot of pain. There's bleeding, which means loss of nutrients and things like that. So Allah has given that concession. However, she's still obliged. So the obligation of fasting is still on her. She can't fast that day, but she has to make it up later on when she has finished from this. But notice here, if she's bleeding, she can't fast. She's not allowed to fast. This is different from a more specific ruling related to pregnancy or breastfeeding. That's more detailed. We can talk about that later, inshallah. And these are the main things that make up, therefore, the obligation of fast, the pillars of fasting. The intention, the abstaining from all those things that break the fast. Is the time finished for the first session? 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Okay, 4 minutes. Now, we said that if a person, there's essentially two types of illness. There's illness which is long-term illness, chronic illness. Yeah, remember what I told you? Gave you some examples. Chronic illness. This is illness which a person is not going to get better. They always need medicine, they always need to eat, or whatever. This kind of person, they are not obliged to fast. Okay? Meaning that they don't have to fast. However, they have to do something instead of the fasting. And what is that? That's something called fidya. Fidya means a compensation that they have to pay. And we'll talk about that later, inshallah. However, if somebody is ill, but not in the illness which is chronic. So it's just a short term. It's a passing illness. They've got a cold, they've got a headache, they've got, something which they is not making them well. Do they fast or do they not fast? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them the concession and the permissibility to not fast. So if they are ill and that illness affects them, it's an illness which they need to take medicine or they need to eat or whatever, then they have the permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fast. فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا, Allah says, then they are allowed to fast. However, what is better for them? Is it better to fast or better not to fast? It really is something that they have to assess. And that is as follows. If a person thinks that their illness is something that they can manage, it's not going to get worse by them fasting, they can cope, and they can, then it's better for them to fast. Why? Because this is a special day. It's better than to leave an obligation on your head for later on. However, if they feel, no, I can't, this is affecting me, I might get worse, I can't do this, then it's better for them not to fast. So they have to assess their situation. And similarly for a person on journey. If you are on journey and it doesn't matter whether the journey is local, meaning local, it's within the UK, you're going to Manchester or Leicester or Wales or something, or you are traveling internationally, that doesn't matter as long as it's above the minimum distance, which is 50 miles. If you are traveling and you travel before Fajr, so here this is before the obligation has become on you, because the obligation hits the moment Fajr enters, then you have the permissibility to break your fast as well. Even if the travel is so easy. You say, no, you had your suhoor and you've gone on a journey, and then you say, well, should I fast? Should I not fast? I'm on journey. You have a choice to whether to break your fast or to carry on. The same as what we said for the person who is ill. If it's easy for you to fast whilst on journey, then it's better for you to fast. If it's hard for you to fast on journey, it's going to make your fast difficult, it's going to make your life hard, then it's better to break your fast. There's no fast. We can't say it's better to fast on journey, or we can't say it's better to break your fast. It's going to depend on your situation, whether or not. So if you are not going to be harmed by fasting, it's better to fast. If you're going to be harmed, then don't fast. The person who is ill temporarily has a choice, we said, yeah? But when Ramadan ends, if they have not fasted, because they are obliged to fast, they're under the 4 categories: Islam, sound mind, adolescence, and able. So they have the ability, but that ability is only temporarily has been taken away from them. Once they get a chance after Ramadan, they have to make up that fast. Okay? If they are chronically ill, they don't have to make up that fast. And just 2 more points, and then we'll end, inshallah, for the first session. Point number 1 is that once Ramadan hits, you have an obligation to fast. And this is a scenario that sometimes happens to some people. Tomorrow is Ramadan, for example. And therefore, it's an obligation on us to fast, yeah? You didn't have an intention to fast. Mommy and daddy didn't wake you up for suhoor. And not only that, but they didn't tell you it's Ramadan. And it's one of those days. It's the 29th of Sha'ban. You don't know it's tomorrow Ramadan. Nobody told you. You woke up the next day, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and they said to you, oh, it's Ramadan, by the way. So you go around and say, well, I didn't have the intention to fast, so there's no point in me fasting. I didn't have intention. Intention is important for my fast, so I might as well just have breakfast. We say no. Because it's Ramadan now, you have to fast, even though you didn't have the intention. However, your fast has to be made up. You have to make up another day. Why? Because you're missing the intention. So even though you didn't have the intention, you still have to fast because the obligation hasn't been removed from you. But because you didn't have the intention, you have to make up that fast. Similarly, it happens if somebody does the same thing but the other way around. Meaning that on the last day of Ramadan, the 30th of Ramadan, they thought it is Eid. So they woke up, they're all cheerful, it's Eid, they've got the Eid clothes on, they've got the balloons in their hands, okay, and they then go and eat some breakfast. Then somebody comes and says, it's not Eid today, so Ramadan. They're making this mistake doesn't exempt them from the fact that they made a mistake, because they knew it was Ramadan, they thought it was Eid, but it turned out not to be Eid. Now it's Ramadan. You've eaten. It's not that you've forgotten. You didn't forget. You did it on purpose, but you thought it was Eid. Now you say to them, stop eating, fast the rest of the day, but then you're going to have to make up another day because you broke your fast and we didn't make the fast for us. All right? We're going to stop there, inshallah, for now. I want to have some questions now, or you want to have all the questions at the end?
We'll leave it at the end. It'll be end, inshallah. Omer. We'll have just a quick break, just for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, if that's okay. I will continue the second session, inshallah, after.
We have covered the basics of the obligation in terms of fasting. So it says on it says obliged, when does it start, and what are the things that we need to do. So now we're going to just enter into a little bit more details in some aspects which we need to know about, and also some recommended aspects. So first of all, if you break a fast, it's one of two things. Either you've done it on purpose with no reason, no valid reason, or you've done it with a valid reason. Now, if you've broken a fast with a valid reason, you're ill, you travel, or for the woman who is on her cycle or postnatal bleeding, then it's recommended to make up the fast as soon as possible. Recommended to make up the fast as soon as possible before the next Ramadan. All right? If you've broken your fast with a reason, it's recommended. If you've broken your fast without a valid reason, okay, then it is obligatory. You have to make up the fast right away. Meaning, after Eid, because you can't fast the day of Eid, after Eid, you have to make up the fast straight away. Okay, because when you break it with no valid reason, you don't have the concession. So you have to make it up straight away. If you have a reason, you have up until the next Ramadan to make up the fast. However, it's best to do it as soon as possible. Why? Because this is a debt on you. And if you were to die or something happened to you, then that's a debt. And it's always, a Muslim should always be looking to be free of debt. Don't allow any debts to accumulate on you, whether it's zakah, whether it's salah, whether it's fasting. Okay? So that's one. Now, recommended acts of fasting. It's recommended to break your fast as soon as the sun sets. Okay? When the sun sets, it means Maghrib card, break your fast as soon, but there's no extra rewards for delaying it, an extra 15 minutes or an hour or whatever, you can extra brownie coins from going further. But no, as soon as and the Prophet ﷺ encouraged this. He said, ما زالت أمتي بخير ما عجلوا الإفطار. My ummah continues to be in a good situation as long as they hasten the breaking of the fast. And what's the best way to break your fast? With moist dates, ghutab, preferably 3. If you don't have 3 moist dates, then 1 moist date, or if you don't have moist dates, then dry dates. If you don't have dates at all, the best thing to break your fast with is then water. Okay? Because that's the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So say you don't have dates, don't go for a glass of milk or have your samosa or your pakora or something like that. No, but go for the water, have some water, then dive into the rest of the meal. And also recommended to make dua. Dua, whilst you are fasting, this is a good time because the fasting person is in is in an elevated state of spirituality, closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So continually make dua whilst you are fasting, but more so when you are breaking your fast, it's a good time to make fast. Some of the dua that has been narrated, Allahumma laka sumtu wa ala rizqika aftar, ذهب الظمأ وابتلت العروق وثبت الأجر إن شاء Allah. That's like a regular dua, but try to also increase the other duas that you have as well. Also, in this area, it's good that you have a list of dua, a specified list. It's good to have like 3 or 5 dua, your top lists, your wish list, that you are always repeating in Ramadan. You have your top 3 dua, you always, whenever you have this time, sujood, after salah, whenever you're in the car, you're in a bus, whenever you're always making these dua. And some of the righteous people of the past, they said, we used to have specific du'as that we used to aim in Ramadan, and we used to find that when we focused our dua in Ramadan, next Ramadan would not come until our dua was answered. So it is like almost like a guarantee. That there's a story that I want to share with you if I have time, but I don't have time. At the end, if we have 1 or 2 minutes, I will share it with you if you are interested to hear that story. So dua, recommended to hasten your fast, recommended to delay your suhoor. Suhoor is a gift that Allah has given this ummah. The previous nations of Jews and Christians, we didn't have suhoor when they used to fast. So this suhoor is extra. And that's why it's recommended to have suhoor, even if it's just to drink some water. But preferably have something which is, some food, something that will keep you. Different cultures, different countries, different people will have different types of suhoor. Some have a full-blown meal. Some will have some breakfast. Some will have dates. Wherever you take is better. And delay it as close to Fajr, but be careful of not overstepping the Fajr line. And that's why some of the ulama, they say, they give you, and some people also, they put in the calendar and they say Isab time. The real time to stop eating is Fajr. However, give yourself some buffer. A buffer of about 10 minutes is good. Because now that you've all eaten, if you put your tongue on, now if you had ate right up to the end of Fajr, and Fajr time, Adhan has gone, and they say, and then you ate that food, what's happened to your fast? Broken. Yeah? Because it's a substance that has entered your body in the time that you shouldn't be. So that's why giving yourself a buffer zone, finish your meal 10 minutes before Fajr, go and wash your mouth, you're going to brush your teeth, have a good rinse, make sure there's nothing in your mouth. And then therefore you don't have to worry about this thing happening. However, if you are eating right up until Fajr and you stop that, it's fine, but be careful nothing enters after Fajr. Now, if you need to do the ghusl, the ritual wash, it's recommended to do it before Fajr. If you do it after Fajr, it's fine. It doesn't affect your salah, but it's better to do it before. Once you are fasting, and this is something that will be probably addressed next week. So remember, next week is about the spirit of fasting, the inner dimensions and the secrets of fasting. Fasting is not just about not eating and drinking. This is the outward, if you like, the textual things of what you should do. The spiritual aspect of fasting is to refrain from all haram as well. So don't just refrain from eating and drinking, but refrain from lying and backbiting and gossip and anything that's going to affect your a'mal. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants this fasting for you to be in an elevated state. So also make sure that you're not fasting, abstaining from food and drink, but you're breaking your fast by backbiting or slandering others. Also try to leave things which are permissible. Normally there are things that are permissible. Playing on your PlayStation or on your mobile, or watching television or chatting to your friends, or these things that are permissible. Try to also reduce those things. That's also recommended. It's a time to control. So that self-control is about doing what's best. If somebody tries to argue with you or to fight you or to just cause you, remember to remind yourself, Allahumma inni sa'im, I'm fasting, and remind him that you are fasting, to just leave me alone. Let me get on with that fasting. It's also recommended to not do the following. Avoid cupping. What's cupping in Arabic? Is in hijama. Does hijama break your fast? No. But because it weakens you, you're having blood taken. The Prophet ﷺ actually he did hijama once when he was fasting, so that's showing us that it's permissible. But when you have blood taken and you're fasting, you're weakening you're more likely to collapse and have pain. So best to not avoid cupping unless you're really super strong and you need it. Allahu A'lam. Don't do any chewing. Now there are some gums. I don't like gums, but personally, I'm anti-gum. But there are some gums that don't have flavor. Yeah, they have a lot in our countries. They're just flavorless gum. Now, if you had that flavorless gum, that doesn't break your fast. Why? Because there's no substance that's entering your mouth. It's just the gum, going. Okay, like yes. But if it's a flavored gum, then that does break your fast because that's sugar and flavors which are entering your body, so that breaking. However, it's better not to chew at all. Don't chew the unflavored gum. Also, avoid tasting the food if you can. Tasting the food is different from eating food. Tasting the food is basically you stick your tongue out, you put some food on it. That food, because your tongue is what tastes. It's not your stomach that tastes. Your tongue, you put some food on that, and then you rinse your mouth out, that's fine. Now sometimes people say, the husbands need to do that when they're doing the cooking, isn't it? The husbands, when they're doing the cooking, they might have to taste the food because they don't want to upset their wives by making the food too salty or something like that. So sometimes they will taste the food. Right, the other way around, though. Yeah, the husband is the one who cooks. No, but whoever is going to be cooking, tasting the food is permissible, but don't swallow the food. So that's the difference. However, if you can avoid it altogether, that's fine. That's better. Similarly, specifically in the Shafi'i madhab, they also encouraged you not to brush your teeth. He said it's better not to brush your teeth after dhuhr. Why? Because they said brushing your teeth will cleanse your mouth, it freshens your mouth up, and Allah actually loves the smell of a fasting person. In the hadith, la khalufu fam as-sa'im atyabu 'inda Allah min rih al-misk. The smell that is in the mouth of a fasting person is more beloved to Allah than musk. So Imam al-Shafi'i said, look, because this is the reality, it's best not to remove that smell. So don't brush your teeth after dhuhr. However, if you brushed your teeth after dhuhr, does it break your fast? No. It doesn't break your fast, okay? It's better not to fast, but it doesn't break your fast. It breaks your fast if you swallow the toothpaste and you swallow the mouthwash and everything else that's in the bathroom. That will break your fast. But if you're just brushing your teeth, even with toothpaste, remember it's a taste, it's a flavor which you're spitting out, that doesn't break your fast. In Ramadan, it's recommended to be extra generous to your family. You guys are all generous, mashallah, but be extra generous in Ramadan to your family. Be extra good to your relatives, to your neighbors. Try to give more charity in Ramadan, because that's when the Prophet ﷺ used to give more charity. He was the most generous in Ramadan. Try to increase more recitation and study of the Quran, because Ramadan is Shahrul Quran. Try to do i'tikaf if you have the ability to do that. I'tikaf is for both brothers and sisters, so both of them can do i'tikaf. In fact, in a quite a strange hadith, the Prophet ﷺ used to do i'tikaf in his masjid. You might have seen the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, quite small, it's not big. So he did i'tikaf. He would have like a small tent in there where he would, go in. And one day he went, we got used to doing i'tikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan. And one year he went to do i'tikaf, and then he looked into the masjid and he found all these tents in the masjid. He said, what's this? All this stuff. They said, these are your wives. They're all doing i'tikaf. And they said, so he said, Al-birra arad. Is it really that you are seeking righteousness? Are you really trying to do i'tikaf? Or you just want to be close to me? They're all competing. Wives are competing with one another, so they all wanted to do i'tikaf. So actually the Prophet said, you know what, I'm cancelling my i'tikaf this year. SubhanAllah, he cancelled it for a bigger purpose. He ended up doing i'tikaf in Shawwal to make up. So anyway, the point being is that women were doing i'tikaf as well, and it's permissible to do that if the masjid has that kind of facility. And more specifically in the last 10 days, because that's the night, according to most ulama, which has Laylatul Qadr. So seeking Laylatul Qadr obviously is a great thing that a person needs to do. Okay, time is running out. I'm just going to mention one thing. What happens if you break your fast in Ramadan? If you break your fast in Ramadan and you are able to make the fast, then you have to make it. If you did it, like I say, if you did it on purpose without a reason, you have to do it straight away. If you did it on purpose with a reason, then you do it up to until Ramadan. However, if you're somebody who can't fast because you're either chronically ill or you have a terminal illness, then you have to do a fidya. And the fidya means that for every day that you don't fast, you have to feed a poor person. Okay? And that poor person, you'll feed him a meal, basically. A meal for every day, you're going to feed them a meal. In the past, they used to say a mud. A mud is like this, basically, which is like a handful of food of the staple diet. But an average meal that you would eat, you'd have to feed that person for whatever you cannot fast. There is more details in regards to someone who breaks their fast due to intercourse. But because I think due to the nature of this, I don't know if everybody wants to know about this, but you will find this in the book if you want to read it, or if you want to ask the question, I will answer the question. And lastly, it remains for me to say that Ramadan is a great opportunity, obviously, to get the good deeds from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is aspects which we have to do, and this is what we discussed today. The fiqh, the do's, the do not, how to make your fast sound. And that is something that we have addressed. And by doing this, you are at the basic level. The higher level is to understand the bigger aspirations of Ramadan, what to try and achieve in Ramadan in terms of your spirituality, in terms of your closeness to Allah, in terms of your ahmal. That's something that will be addressed, inshallah, next week. I'm not going to talk about Zakat al-Fitr because time has run out. And also, there are other aspects of i'tikaf, for example. Again, we can't talk about that because of time. But these are all things that probably will be addressed in due course, because it's good that a person knows those rulings and tries to practice them in their life. I'tikaf is a great opportunity to seclude yourself and to be with yourself, not with your phone in the masjid. Probably what people do nowadays, they're going to the masjid, they're i'tikaf, but they're with the phone. So they're doing i'tikaf on their phone. But rather do i'tikaf, we are secluded. You are isolated from the outside world to focus on your ibadah, to think about yourself. Zakat al-Fitr is an important aspect of our practice as well, which we need to know the rules as well, but something that inshallah hopefully is addressed in the different session. Jazakumullah khair. I think it's a good opportunity to stop here, and if anybody has any questions, then inshallah we can answer.
Jazakumullah khair, Sheikhna. Barakallah keep. Now, yeah, we'll start with the questions, but just before that, I'd just like to mention something that after the Sheikh, mashallah, explanation, it's good to remind ourselves that fiqh in general is a beautiful thing. I know Dr. Omer, mashallah, explained this very, very easily, but we did all notice that after everything as mentioned in that, there is a dalil, of course. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Rasulullah قال أو dalil من القرآن, or there is a dalil from Quran. And so, if anyone that is interested in fiqh or knows or read about fiqh, they would know that it's beautiful. It's just literally like math, because when you see how the big scholars talk about fiqh, you would go deep into fiqh, you would know how they came out with that. If something is not very clear, how they came out with that hukm. So we all now had it, like literally on our phone, just by a click of a button, you would know if this is permissible or not. There are lots of things that come out every day in nowadays, and fiqh would address them at the scholars around the world would know how to deal with them or how to interpret them. So jazakallah khair Shaykhna, mashallah, to make this very easy to everyone. And if there is any questions, these let's ask Sheikh Omer. Anyone wants, just raise your hand. Jazakallah khair. We'll start. We had sorry about that. We had a question just to start with our brother and the Sheikh. Just all the video for after. Please.
What's the ruling on swearing during Ramadan? Because sometimes you tend to hear people say breaks your fast. So the ruling on that.
So the things that break your fast are the things that we mentioned, which is the eating, drinking, any substance that enters the body cavity, vomiting on purpose, or as we mentioned, the intercourse, masturbation. These are things that will break the fast. Things that you do with your tongue which are haram, or indeed with your body, stealing, maybe, I don't know, you hope nobody's going to kill somebody, but if you kill somebody, or even the things that you mentioned, swearing, backbiting, all these things, they don't break the fast in terms of rules and regulations, but they can injure your fast very badly because it goes against the essence of fasting. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, "Man lam yada' qawl as-su' wal 'amala bih." Whoever does not leave false speech and actions related to false, meaning false practice, then Allah is not in need of him to leave his food and drink. So it's a very scary hadith, because Allah is saying is, you're leaving your food and drink, but you're not leaving all the bad deeds, so Allah doesn't even need your fasting. Allah is not going to do, And there is another narration, which I don't think is a hadith, but it is a saying of the righteous people, that some people fast, and the only thing they get from their fast is hunger. Because that's all they're getting. They're not getting reward, they're not getting any benefit. So swearing doesn't break your fast in that regard, but it's something that will hurt your fast.
Oh, sorry, but this is kind of topic. I'm trying to do deep dive studies, and I was already referring some study books. So like etiquettes, for example, and maybe like, because there's many big conversations about makkah and such, and how they have different views of the words aspect.
What are you doing? What's the topic?
This in general, as I'm trying to deep dive Islam studies, so I'm trying to find how ethicals.
Yes, there's a very good book, which is an old traditional book, and that's called Al-Adab al-Mufrad. Al-Adab al-Mufrad, compiled by Imam Bukhari. And this book you can find, there's a website called sunnah.com. Sunnah.com. If you go there, look for the book Adab al-Mufrad, which is almost like the unique adab, the unique etiquettes. He brings lots of narrations. Some of it are hadith, some of it are sayings of the Sahaba or their practices about good behavior. He starts by talking about relations with the parents, and then with relatives, and with neighbors, and then all different aspects which relate to etiquette. So that might be a good point to start.
Sorry.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bill.
So in Islam, why do we have prophets? People that been wanting to know for a while. So better.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our creator. Yeah, He's the one that created us. He created everything in the heaven and the earth. And He communicated to us because He didn't want us to see Him. This is part of our iman, to believe in Him. But so that we understand what He wants from us, He chose people to give Him the message, and then they will take the message to the people. So the role of the prophets are to communicate with Allah, sometimes directly, sometimes through an angel, sometimes maybe through a dream, and then they will speak to the people and tell them what Allah wants from them. Alright, so they are like, and that's why sometimes prophets are called messengers, because they carried a message. Okay, so that's the role of the prophets. Alright? You're welcome.
Bishop, so addresses earlier the difference in the timing of contention when it comes to the compulsory and sunnah.
Yes.
Yeah. What's the reason for that being the difference?
So there is a narration where the Prophet ﷺ, he entered the house of one of his wives. Some put that as Aisha, some put it as another wife. And he asked them, is there any lunch? Is there any lunch? And she said, we don't have any. So he said, therefore, I'm going to be fasting today. Or I am fasting. So from this reality, it shows that the Prophet ﷺ didn't have the intention, or the intention wasn't there before Fajr. Rather, it was delayed after the day had started. So they said that this applies for recommended fasts. So with a recommended fast, if you haven't eaten and before Dhuhr time, up to Dhuhr time, if you have eaten, then you decided to fast that day, then your intention can be made today. But in Ramadan, no, because it's an obligation. It's not a question of is there food or no food. You have to make that intention before Fajr.
It's not. One line, there's a video going around where if you're eating, for example, an apple and the light for fire goes on, they said that there's a hadith where Muhammad says, I should finish the apple for a while.
Some, there are quite a few narrations actually which give a similar kind of perception. That even some of them say, there were some of the Sahaba were eating their suhoor and the adhan was made and the iqamah was made and the people were praying and this Sahabi is continuing to eat, saying that this is fine. So there are some narrations like this, but these narrations, according to the consensus of the ulama afterwards, these were practices that are not considered mainstream, meaning that there's not a consensus. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says clearly, eat and drink until the white string of the Fajr becomes clear to you or becomes distinct from the black string of the night. Meaning the moment Fajr enters, Allah says eat and drink until Fajr. So the Quran is clear about that. And I'd like to say the majority of the ahadith in that regards is that once Fajr enters, halas, you have to stop. So these ahadith, sometimes there are certain narrations which seem strange. In every aspect of Islam, there will be certain small narrations that may seem not quite fitting. But those are considered, if you like, exemptions to the law. So that's why we have our ulama to clarify these things for us, and alhamdulillah, that's their clarification. Any other questions? Yes?
Sheikh, can you hear the story?
Okay, I don't think there's any other questions, so I can give you the story. I will end with that. Nobody else have any questions? No? Do you have one more question? What's your question?
Why do all religions worship the same God, but they call the same God different names in their religion?
So it's related to sometimes related to language, and sometimes it's related to tradition. Like for example, the Jews, they don't speak Arabic, so they speak Hebrew. So they in their language they will call God, they will call Elohim, or sometimes you call him Yahuda. So they have different words. So even like the word, have you heard the word, the name Mikael? Yeah? No? Jibril? Yeah? So Jibril is made out of two words, Jabr and Il. Il is the name of God in a different language. So Jibril is the slave of God, like Abdullah. Or Mikael, Israfil. So they have different languages, different traditions. Some religions have made up names of gods which are not true. Like the Greeks and the Romans, they made up all these different false gods. So those are not true gods, they are false gods. Some people worship gods that are not gods. So that's why you have these different things. Alright?
Okay, so that was some modern relations.
Okay, I'm going to end then inshallah with a story which I told you about. And this is a story which is a true story. This thing that I just mentioned to you, I used to live in Sheffield. And this is many years ago, probably more than 20 years actually. I gave a khutbah and I mentioned this thing about making the dua and increasing the dua. And then that's it. And I made that khutbah with Zubayd. Then almost the next Ramadan, a brother came to me and he said, I want to tell you what happened with me. I said, okay. He said, I had a very bad neighbor. Okay, very bad neighbor. He was very abusive. He was playing loud music. He was having parties and all these kind of things. Very annoying. And I heard what you said, and I used that Ramadan as an opportunity to say, oh Allah, please get rid of me of this neighbor. This neighbor is annoying, and just rid me of this neighbor. And I kept on making that dua. And he said, for the next months, I didn't see anything happening. There's no indication that anything was going to happen. But literally the month before Ramadan, the next Ramadan, he said all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, police came to the house, and they came and they arrested the guy, and they took him away, and his whole family got evacuated. He said, now I don't know exactly what happened, but he's assuming that they were involved in some sort of crime or some sort of illegal. But literally, he said, next one, the police came and they forced them out of the house, and that was the end of the news. And then he said, I remembered what you had said. And he said, I want to come and tell you this because I was doubting that this practice really comes in, something really happens. And so it did happen, and you wanted to share that. And obviously, that there is an important aspect here, and that is yaqeen. You have to have certainty. When you make dua, when you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to have certainty that Allah will answer your dua. If you don't have certainty, then yes, your dua is not going to be answered, depending on your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that's the point that this guy took that story, he practiced it, and he gave us a modern implication of how that happens. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah khair, brother. You never know. Maybe another moral story is tell us where that meditate, that hided, so you underneath exhibit, don't annoy it. Jazakallah khair, and thank you everybody for attending tonight. Jazakallah khair for your patience. And another reminder of the book, anyone wants to grab a copy of that book, which I'll just read about the chapter of Ramadan, some of the shatter perspective. Please be free to draw it up and just write your name on the paper. If there is more food and more refreshment in there, if anyone wants. Just one last thing to conclude is just keep us in your du'as. This is our precedent as a Dawah committee in Muslims Association of Imam and Drill. And inshallah there are more to come, and we would love for you to be with us in the company. But inshallah we'll be ordered an event in February, mid-February. We'll send you inshallah for details about that. But really, it is you who make this happen. So thank you very much, Jazakallah khair, and may Allah accept all our deeds, and may Allah make us reach Ramadan inshallah, and finish it with inshallah, and know the below inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Sana Arabic, Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.